Okay, so continuing on from where the previous video left, what is basically tradition and culture. We are not the same country that we were in the early 1900s or the early 20th century. And to say that we should still be living like they lived in the early 1900s to me is ludicrous because we're not the same nation. And I want to continue with some points that I started, but I didn't get to finish in the last video, and that is J.R. Enzi in his book, Does God Really Care About Clothing Styles? Not only chalks up the whole women's wearing skirts and dresses only as tradition and culture, but also that the actual wearing of pants began to surface with the feminist movement and with the men going off to war for World Wars One and Two, and basically the problem was that women were having to go into factories and steel mills, and that required them to wear their husband's pants to work. Well, here's the thing. If it was that big of a cultural necessity, then they should have found some other way besides war. Um, I mean, if it was going to send an entire nation to hell, then I would say war was not the best issue because we may have won the war, but we lost our souls. So, in order to justify that statement that it's because of the war that women started wearing pants, you would have to say that. You would have to say, okay, well, we won the war, but we lost our souls because now women are wearing pants. And to chalk it up to the feminist movement's not the same thing, or not really a credible reference either, because the feminist movement actually had its beginnings in the late 1500s, early 1600s. And women, though it was more common for them in the 40s to wear pants or breeches, actually you can find pictures of women wearing pants of various types in the 1800s. You know, they had bicycling pants. They had other pants that they wore for working back in that day. So women have always have much later than the 1940s and 1950s wore pants. Now, granted, it became more popular during that time, and it was probably an uncomfortable change of cultural norms for devout religious people. But to say that God took a picture in the early 1900s of women wearing pants and or women wearing dresses and skirts and men wearing pants, to say that God took a picture of that society and demands that that's the way that his church should look throughout the remainder of the church age is unbelievably arrogant. For one, you're assuming that your societal norms of how you dress are so pleasing to God that you don't need the God of the Bible, you just need the principles of the Bible for society. To me, that's putting the cart before the horse. You are actually saying that we're doing so great as a nation that God is going to pattern the rest of the world after the way that we as American Christians dress, the way we act. And I've got news for you. You can go to a lot of churches and find more problems that you'll ever need, especially at a Pentecostal church. I mean, where I come from, Pentecostal churches are so laden with problems that, no offense, a woman wearing pants should be the least of the issues. A woman wearing makeup or cutting her hair should be the smallest problem. Why? Because they've got so many other things. It reminds me of that Bugs Bunny commercial where Bugs Bunny is fighting that little alien guy, Marvin the Martian. And it's funny because Marvin the Martian is just blowing Bugs Bunny away. So Bugs Bunny takes refuge in this castle. And Marvin the Martian comes in, he's shooting everything with his little laser gun thing and blowing up everything around Bugs Bunny. Well, he's defending this fort. And by the end of it, Bugs Bunny is sitting there, you know, barely alive. He's cut up, he's bruised, he's beat up bad. He's got like a sling on his arm, and with one arm he's holding up one piece of flooring from the entire castle. So you're wanting to defend this fort so bad that by the end of it, all you're going to have is this one piece anyway. You're going to have this one piece of this fort left. And I think that's what a lot of religious people make the mistake of. They want to defend this teaching, this doctrine, and make this a cornerstone issue. But guess what? Your divorce rate matches that of the world. Your kids are still being, you have a lot of promiscuous teenagers. You have people that are still getting divorced, that are arguing with their wives and their husbands. Their kids wind up leaving when they become an adult because they see that it's the same thing as their buddies in the world are talking about, that have moms and dads that are alcoholics. I mean, what does that say about the church when, you go to school and you can compare your parents' marriage to your buddy's parents' marriage? Their parents are maybe alcoholics or drug addicts, and they fight all the time. Well, guess what? Your parents may not be alcoholics or drug addicts, but they still fight all the time, and often just as severely as these people fight. But thank God the mom's not wearing a pair of pants or cutting her hair. Thank God the father doesn't have any long hair on his head because the marriage is falling apart. I mean, that's the only thing that's keeping you saved, right? Again, I think it's a lot of putting the cart before the horse. And to say, again, that by placing that Western Americanized tradition on the church, that, hey, the book of Moses or the book of Deuteronomy written by Moses, the law of Moses, says that a woman shall not wear that which pertains to a man. Well, I've got news for you. If I go to Walmart and I go over into the women's department and I buy a pair of women's pants, the low-rise thingies that have the flowers printed on the side and they're hot pink. If I buy those pants and I wear them, wouldn't I technically be cross-dressing? I mean, wouldn't a Pentecostal church look at me like a bit of a freak if I walked in wearing those? So it's not really the pants that they're taking issue with. I mean, there's something else they're taking issue with. Because the way I interpret that is that clothes that are in a woman's department belong to that of a woman. A man doesn't have any business going into a woman's department and buying women's clothes. Women don't need to be going to men's departments and buying men's clothes to wear. They've got their own clothes that they can wear. I interpret that as that. Now, as long as it's modest, I still believe in modesty. You don't need to wear tight, fitting, revealing clothes, but that's Christian modesty. That's decent modesty. And that, I mean, to me, that's common sense. But to say that we have to have our women not wear pants because culturally in America that used to be shunned, well, guess what? We're almost 100 years removed from 1913 when that was the picture of American life. I mean, they have a term, they have another religious group that lives like that. They're called the Amish, Finally, I want to say about the whole pants dress thing. I very much understand that it is a conviction that they abide by. But to sum up with what Paul, Peter, and Moses were saying, there is a way to apply that to modern day culture. There is a way to apply that to our modern day society. And I don't think that is the way that it was interpreted in 1910 and 1913. I believe that there is a modern day application to that. We can't do everything like we did 100 years ago. If we did, nothing would get done. So feel free to comment. I'm probably going to follow up with another video because this is something that I just really am very passionate about. This is something that I'm very, I don't know really how to word it. This is something that I lived for so long, and I just want to tell the world about this, that they may find some semblance of peace. Thank you.